Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined by my co-host George Aldridge, and today we bring you another episode of our midweek show Film Club. How this basically works is that each week we nominate a film at the end of our main show that ties in with our review for that week. This week was our Jurassic Park trilogy review, and it was my choice of the film, so I chose the 1987 John McTiernan film Predator. Little few reasons why I chose this film. You've got the whole survival aspect in a jungle environment with your cast of characters. I kind of went off the Velociraptor angle here, compared it with Predator. And also watching this film again, you pick up a lot more on the sort of links with Spielberg in the sense of pacing and the atmosphere and the build-up before you get the big reveal of your monster in the film. So they were a few reasons I picked it. But yeah, why don't we just get straight into the review then? So if you want to go into the plot.
Yeah, so we're introduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger and his Special Forces crew, who are literally like ultra males. They are told by their commander that they've had a downed helicopter in like enemy territory, which is guerrilla warfare. Although the Vietnam War had finished at the release of this film, they kind of placed it in there just because it was still relevant at the time, I suppose. And then when they get there, they start getting hunted down one by one, and it becomes clear that it's not the Vietnam or any of that, it's an actual predator.
Yeah, and you know, that's basically the plot in a nutshell, just a group of people trying to survive from an alien. And with a film like this, which to be honest is one of the quintessential 80s action movies of all time, I would say, you don't need a really involved plot. It does exactly what the film needs to. It's a little over 100 minutes, and you know, the pacing's great in this film. You know exactly what you're getting in for. I mean, you just look at the poster of this film. Schwarzenegger with a gun. Schwarzenegger's name at the top of the poster. Predator. That's it. That's the film.
I know, and it's like every single Schwarzenegger film from back then. You needed his name, and it was a sold concept. If he went on board, you're gonna get that film made regardless. And it's definitely one of his best films.
Oh yeah, and you know, at this time, obviously they'd be plastering his name over everything, because with this film coming out, he'd just done... Well, Conan was his first big breakthrough role. I mean, I'm not counting his first ever role, which was like Hercules in New York or whatever that goddamn film was. He'd done Commando, he'd done the first Terminator as well, so he was already sort of a household name at this point. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favourite Arnie movies, and the lines in this film as well. These are some of the most quotable Schwarzenegger lines, I think, out of any of his stuff. Obviously, other than the obvious Terminator one.
I know. I mean, you talk about, you know, it was always the 80s films. They had the best one-liners, arguably, of any decade before. I mean, kind of starting with The Empire Strikes Back with I Know.
Oh yeah.
But the Arnie ones, he's given us so many, but I think these are his best ones. Like, as much as, you know, I'll Be Back, this has got some incredible ones, which I cannot wait to learn in my Schwarzenegger voice.
And the difference is, like, I still love going to see Arnie movies. I know a lot of people say that he's kind of dropped off now. People don't want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger in films because he's bad now. I don't think he's bad. I think it's just the kind of films he's been picking are a bit rubbish. But I always love supporting his films. But the difference is with the one-liners in this film, going back to the 80s, they were definitely a product of the time, whereas now you kind of roll your eyes at them and go like, oh, okay, we'll accept it because it's Arnie. But back in this time, this was in his prime of his filmmaking.
Yeah, and that's the point. When he was on form, it was awesome to watch them. And nowadays, he mentions some of his newer work. You're right, I think he sees a project, he kind of picks it, a bit excited, he doesn't really know what he's getting himself into. So it's kind of worked well. I think he's had one or two hits, but it's kind of summed it up by him rushing back to do Terminator, because I think some of it's been like terrible, a few of the films he's done recently. But then again, he was the mayor of California, so he had other plans.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it does seem like, and even Stallone's doing this as well. They're going back to a lot of their earlier projects with the big names. Obviously with Stallone, he's going to do another Rambo film. He's got the new Rocky spin-off coming out later this year, which I'm actually really looking forward to. Schwarzenegger's doing exactly the same thing. There's talks that he's going to do another Conan film. He's got this new Terminator film coming out. And, you know, I don't want to make this a Terminator review, but that looks really bad. And it kind of looks like the same eye-rolling groaning, oh, okay, he's got to say that one-liner because he did it from the 80s. But with this film, I don't want to make this a Terminator review, but with Predator, this was just the peak of 80s manliness, testosterone-filled action movies.
Yep, and there is one moment which perfectly epitomises that, and it's when you've got Carl Weathers. Oh, sorry, that's the actor known as Apollo Creed in Rocky 1, 2, and 4. He sees him for the first time in years, and they don't just shake hands. They have this like manly like sort of clap of shaking hands in a sort of tense moment. Then it's just and it's kind of just their like biceps on show everywhere.
Oh yeah, that's my favourite moment of the film. You just get Carl Weathers sees Arnie, and they just walk to each other. He goes, "Dylan, you son of a bitch," and then you get the hand. It's kind of like they arm wrestle for a bit, don't they, just to prove who's macho enough.
Exactly, and it just sums it up like in a nice way, of course. It isn't like slagging off, but it's so like brilliant because every 80s film was that all of your action stars, they were all pumped up on steroids. It's about who's bigger, who's better. But nowadays we don't get that, which is obviously why they made the Expendables. The only one left is ironically The Rock, as we've said before.
Yeah, definitely in modern day action films. But if we're going with that, if we go into the characters a little bit now, I think what I like about this film is, even though it's a real simple concept and a simple movie, obviously all the actors aren't going for Oscars in this film or anything like that, but we do get quite a little bit of character, or like all the characters have personalities and defined traits, which I really like. We get that awesome scene towards the beginning of the film where they're going into the jungle in the helicopter and the song Long Tall Sally's playing, and you just get little snippets of sort of quirky elements to all the characters. You've got Jesse Ventura, who's sort of chewing tobacco and he thinks he's like the machoist one out of all of them. You've got Shane Black, who's sort of cracking bad jokes all the time. And then I can't remember the actor's name, but you've got the one who's sort of a Native American style character. He's the one who stands at the end and cuts his chest with a machete to stand, watch, and try and kill the Predator.
Was that Billy? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
'Cause he gives this. It's not really a speech, but he has these lines where they're like, "Billy's scared." They're like, "Billy, he ain't scared no human." He's like, "This ain't no human."
Yeah.
And it's kind of lines like that which it perfectly sums up the Predator as a monster, but it's kind of giving you these depth to the characters at the same time. Because although they're a squad, they've each got their individual traits that you just pick off from that scene in the helicopter.
Yeah, and it's completely cheesy dialogue. No humans, at least I hope, would ever talk like this, but some of the best lines come from that helicopter bit. Jesse Ventura, where he's chewing on the tobacco and he's passing it round to see if anyone wants some. No one accepts it. He's like, "This stuff will make you a sexual Tyrannosaurus." And it's just hilarious. I mean, I haven't seen this film in, oh god, quite a few years back now, and I completely forgot that line. So it was just hilarious seeing them again. He also has one of the best lines in the film as well with, "Hey man, you're bleeding. Ain't got time to bleed."
I know, and then what you're saying, we hadn't seen this film in years. I think first time I saw this was about 12, 13 at the time, and it was on Film 4 at like 11 p.m. staying up late, or this hardcore pumped 18 rated action film. And it's one of them films when you can kind of remember the first time you see it because of how iconic it is.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Mine was. I don't know if I saw it around the same time. Probably it was definitely sort of in my early to mid-teens, but it's such a good film. But we had this discussion before we started recording. We watched it today, and this isn't a slight against the film because the film's fantastic and it's one of the best 80s action movies out there. But for some reason, we just weren't really feeling it today. And I can't pinpoint why that is exactly.
I saw it last night, or the first like 3/4, and I was building and building. I just don't remember it ever being so slow at like revealing the Predator, because it builds up the Predator so well. I mean, we'll go into it more in detail later. But then I was watching it, I was kind of like, I was like, come on, you gonna kill someone or what? But then when it eventually gets to the second half, it kind of whizzes through. Which is great, because I think the main thing I had to do was build up the Predator as like a worthy opponent to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because obviously we haven't seen this film in quite a few years, and now we're sort of desensitized to the really high energy action sort of films now, that when we go back to these kind of films, the slower burn ones, we go, oh, these are a bit slow, hurry up the pace. So I don't know if it was a case of that, or if it's probably just because we're getting older and we just don't appreciate sort of dumb action movies now. We want a little bit more from it. But I mean, this film's still fun as hell. It's a good one to just sort of throw on, shut your brain off, get some like buddies around, just watch Schwarzenegger shoot at stuff for like an hour and a half.
Exactly. I mean, this is definitely like a Thursday night film. That's what I call it, where you get a group of people watching over a few beers and stuff. This is like one of the perfect ones where it's all turned up. It's just like a classic film for that. And then it was just interesting watching because it's like a sort of a different time for once, obviously different age to seeing it. But I'm not knocking it. I love it. It didn't go down as well as it used to. But I think you can say that about most 80s action films, because as great as they are, they slowly lose it. And I'm also recovering from post Mad Max syndrome, which is It's incredibly hard to get out of the system because everything I watch I compare to that now.
Yeah, and that in itself was kind of an 80s action movie in terms of its action, but just ramped up to what's available in today's filmmaking.
Exactly, and that's why it was so successful. But anyway,
back to Predator. Yeah.
Yes.
Watch our review for that. We talk about that enough. But What do you?
Should we talk about the monster?
Yeah. We'll go straight into the Predator now then. So I was watching. I'll give him credit. Oliver Harper, he does retrospectives on YouTube. It's a brilliant channel. He kind of goes into the detail of the production, and the original design for the Predator itself was a lot different. It was sort of like a long-necked, gangly alien with yellow eyes. And originally they got what's his name, Jean-Claude Van Damme, to wear the suit and do all the stunt work for it. And how they did the kind of invisibility aspect to the Predator is they had him in a red suit, which was obviously chroma keyed out in post. Van Damme thought that was the actual look of the alien. It was like a bright red costume. But he just complained that the suit was too cumbersome to wear. He couldn't move in it. It was hot, so he left the project. And then obviously they did some changes, and we got the Predator that we know and love today. And there's a reason that they did a film with Alien versus Predator, because this is one of the most iconic movie monsters ever, I would say.
Yeah, I've got to agree on most of that. I mean, you can talk about Alien v Predator, which I'm going to briefly do later, where it's so similar to Predator because sort of the aliens hunting them down, etc., etc. When Predator does it in its different tone, because with this isn't the horror. This builds up straight off as an action film, especially with the scene when they take out all the Vietnam soldiers. And it should have been such a good combination. But anyway, with Predator, it's the whole build-up. I mean, first of all, before you even think about the beast, there's the skinned human scene.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that's done is when the sort of the music comes on, like, and then, he pulls the things back. It's all the sick skinned, all their, like, other soldiers and stuff. And that's, like, quite nasty still. I mean, see stuff like that in Game of Thrones every week, but to see it in like a major film, especially like in the 80s, okay, you could get away with it more then. It was still like half disturbing, and it kind of, first of all, it gives up like how like evil this creature is, and then it starts building and building and building. You get personality bits, so you see that it's invisible. There's the gun, there's the heat vision. It's so beautifully crafted, and then it has like a worthy payoff at the end without going into it too much.
Oh yeah, and I mean, going off what you said with Alien versus Predator, that film, I don't even really know how the sort of crossover came to be. I don't know if Predator, I think it moved into comic books, didn't it, after this movie? Definitely around the time Predator 2 came out, I think Predator had his own comic book line, and I think the comics brought the two characters together in that. And then it's always been sort of in the consciousness of everyone, putting the two, on the same level as each other. Because you think about it, if you bring up the Xenomorph from Alien, you've always got a team that's going to say Predator. So there's always that rivalry between the two.
Yeah, I think with Alien v Pred, 20th Century Fox kind of fluked it by having both the distribution rights. They started in the comics at the end of Predator 2. When it goes to spaceship, there's the skull of an alien, which is like, back then, probably one of the coolest Easter eggs you could ever have imagined. And then obviously finally they got the film, and it was a massive disappointment. Then they made it worse for Requiem.
Oh yeah, and I'll just bring it back to the first Predator film. you're talking about the violence in it. There's some really quite extreme violence in this movie, but it's cool because a lot of 80s movies had that 80s action movies, sorry, had that high level of violence in them. I mean, the scene where Carl Weathers gets his arm shot off, and the arm's still twitching on the floor, so the gun's still being fired. You've got I think Jesse Ventura's is like his whole stomach just gets shot out by one of the Predator's guns. I mean, there's some really quite extreme violence in this film, but it works for the film purely because it just highlights what a cold-blooded, merciless hunter the Predator actually is.
Yeah, and I mean, what I also like, there's no backstory to it either.
No.
You don't have a clue. I mean, they kind of touch it. Oh, he's hunting for sport. I can't do his voice that well on that one, but they clock on halfway through. He's doing him one by one, but then that's his plan. He doesn't have a voice, nothing like that. It's such a basic personality and such common evil traits. Just emphasise it to another level, which gives you the final outcome. But it does it, as I said before, by revealing stuff one by one rather than everything at once. I mean, you don't even see his proper face till the final 2 minutes.
No, and I'm guessing one reason for that was obviously because it would have been expensive as hell for like the makeup and to keep the actor in that amount of makeup the whole time while filming. But it's just it just makes the reveal at the end so much more worthwhile. And the makeup on it is still phenomenal to this day. Like, I have no idea how they'd even gone about making that suit, but it completely works. And you get to the Predator at the end, and it seems like his mind's almost like a sponge. Like, whatever he comes into contact with, he like picks up on it. Throughout the film, he sees like characters laughing, and then he replicates that laughing at the end. And it's really quite zany and out there. But just going back to what you said about the sort of backstory with the Predator, you're right, we don't really get much of anything. Obviously, the sequels and Alien vs. Predator, and definitely the Adrian Brody Predators one, it kind of fleshed out the history and the lore a little bit more with Predator. But for a film like this, you really don't need it. You get your first opening shot of sort of, it's like a UFO drone, really, isn't it? And it just sort of drops the Predator on Earth, flies away, and that's it. That's your opening scene to the film. Sort of like John Carpenter's The Thing. It starts off with a very similar shot of the UFO crash into Earth. And that's it. And then you just kind of on the ride with it that an alien extraterrestrial monster's just hunting these guys. And we get the impression that they've done it before because the people in the village say that it's a folklore, that people have gone missing in the past. So we assume this is a regular occurrence.
Yeah. And that's what I like, the fact that it's just the ship and the alien with it, combined with the folklore. They're these cocky American soldiers, and they're kind of like, yeah, no, it's just two or three people. Some of them would refuse to believe that it's not alien, but then it gets into it, and they do start to clock on. But the bit I like most, they don't actually name it Predator either.
No, that's just more sort of the theme of the film, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it could have been so easy for them back then to have come up with some, over-the-top name, bit like Alien. But keeping it so simple kind of improves the character in a sense. Like, say it had a name, I don't know, like Tim. Okay, that's stupid, but it'd kind of be like, if it had been named, it might not have... It would have succeeded as well, but it would have took something away from like the enigma behind it.
Yeah, if it had some kind of nickname or something that called it all the way through the movie. Yeah, I agree with that. And even by the end of the movie, when it self-destructs, which is I love that scene. It does that kind of weird manic laugh. But even by the end, when the Predator dies, you're still kind of really left out of the loop. Like, you don't know where it came from. If there's any more. At the time, you didn't know if there was a whole race of them. We assumed there were because one was dropped, to Earth at the start. But I like that mystery to it because even when Arnold crawls away at the end, he didn't know what went on. He was just caught up in it all, and we kind of feel the same. But I think it still works for the film.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the laugh. For me, it takes me out of it. Like, I think I love the fact that it's like it's a suicide bomber when it dies. So the sort of end game's awesome, but by having that laugh, it kind of took me down a bit. Because it's cool to have like an evil laugh, but it was so blatantly human. I don't think it suited the character of the Predator.
Yeah, maybe if it had a sort of kind of shrill, otherworldly alien noise. That might have worked better, but I think that was because obviously he saw the two characters earlier on in the film laugh, and he kind of tries to do it there, and he does it. I think it works, especially because the film's kind of, it's just a cheese fest, really, isn't it? The whole movie. So at
Yeah.
that point, I can understand what you mean, and I think it may have worked better if it was sort of like a weird alien like shriek that he does. But at that point, I'm just caught up, with the film, on the ride with it. It's cheesy, it's over the top. I just go with it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, moving on with the Predator, that we've got so much to say about it. I mean, we have hardly spoke about like the sort of heat stuff, where adding in the heat tracking is one of the coolest things that happens because when it takes down at the start the old helicopter, they're kind of like, oh, this is heat-seeking missiles, so that gives them like even more belief that it's like a soldier or two. But then when you start getting to it, it's got the point of view shots where it's got the heat, the red, the yellow, all of that, and I think it's such a cool concept because it could easily have normal vision,
Mm.
but keep differentiating it between common stuff we've seen before. It definitely helps to create the Predator itself.
Oh yeah, and the sound effects when it goes into that vision as well. Like just before it goes into it, it's almost like a whip crack sound, and then it goes into the vision, and then the Predator itself has that kind of clicky, guttural sort of noise that it makes. And the effects may seem a bit dodgy, but I still think the whole invisibility thing looks okay to this day. Obviously, I spoke about it earlier. The chroma keyed it in. And the vision that it goes into, it almost reminds me of the first Terminator film, like the red screen vision, the
Yeah,
T800 vision, sort of reminds me like that. And I think that was when they were still experimenting with it. I mean, obviously they came out around similar times.
yeah. Or with the vision stuff, what I love is when it takes its helmet off the first time, it's a point of view shot, so you've got the heat lifts up, then it's completely red, and you've got this like out vision of
Mm.
Schwarzenegger, and it. And I know it's not really like a major thing, but it's so cool that the entire time it's like had these like vision problems, obviously to us.
Yeah, and some of the tensest scenes in the film come from the whole invisibility thing. You've got the one where I forgot his name, the guy who's with Carl Weathers and he spots him. It's after his friends died and he's kind of gone unhinged.
Oh, is it Mac?
Yeah, yeah. And they're kind of crouched underneath this log, and he says that it's over there, and they can see it crouched in a tree. And it's like this really cool moment where they've got to hunt the hunter. It's an awesome bit like that, and then obviously the classic bit at the end where Arnie covers himself in mud. He does the ah thing, which is just great. I love that scene. And then he's hiding in the log, and the predator's right in front of him, but it can't see him because the heat's masked. And then I think it shoots at a mouse or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing because Arnie doesn't know he's waiting for his death at that
Yeah.
moment, and then it's something that you'd never think of. I mean, okay, the writers knew, obviously it's heat
Mm.
vision, but Arnie didn't. So to add that kind of shock value where he finds his weakness and then you can put it back to one of the classic lines that if it bleeds we can
Mm.
kill it. That kind of ties in with that. They're just getting the individual weaknesses off the monster because he's the only person throughout the film that just wouldn't believe he died. Okay, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 80s. He's never going to die in a film. But it's not the point. I mean, Weathers was a big name. Some of them could have stayed alive, but they chose not to, which works in its favour because, okay, we'll talk about again. Alien did it with Ripley, but then Aliens 2, I do prefer that over the first one. You get a load of survivors. Alien 3 survivors. Alien 4 survivors. Alien vs Predator survivors. This is the only one when you get one individual.
Mm. And I know they wanted to bring Arnold Schwarzenegger back for the sequel. I think, did we say before the recording? You mentioned the character he was going to play.
Yeah, there's a CIA. I can't remember the second one. I've only seen it once. There's a CIA character, and I think it's played by Gary
Mm.
Busey. The nutcase from Point Break. And it was revealed that they were in talks to get Arnie back for that. And I think he wanted to. They had it written down, but he couldn't because I believe it was Terminator 2. He was filming it, conflicted with it.
Yeah.
So they kind of had to shunt it and they just cast it as a new character. But because I don't remember anything that character does, I don't know if it's like a big thing or not in the film.
Yeah, I only saw Predator 2 once. I haven't seen any of the Alien vs Predator films, but I saw Predator 2 once. I didn't like it, and the weird thing is, like, with people that like Alien, I can understand why they like it. Saying a 4 film franchise, 2 of those films are awesome, the other 2 aren't so good. With Predator, it's weird because I prefer Predator to Alien, but that's just on the basis of this one movie because I actually kind of dislike all the other Predator films. But this one's just so good, and part of the reason of that is just purely down to Arnie, I think. Like, this film's so good with him in it that any other film that comes out with Predator is just a noticeably lacking Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, so I'm just totally not invested in it.
That's the thing. The reason why it works with Schwarzenegger is because he's got the physical presence to take it down. In Predator 2, it's Danny Glover,
Mm.
and okay, he's in Lethal Weapon. He's got done a few good things, but you can't take him seriously fighting a Predator. Arnold Schwarzenegger, you can, and especially when the Predator takes the mask off, it's their sort of fist to fist fight. You genuinely believe that Schwarzenegger would win that fight back then.
Yeah, and then when you get to the Adrian Brody one, that film was basically just trying to be a remake of this first one. And he kind of bulked up for it a bit, but you just kind of see him as weedy old Adrian Brody, and he's doing his like Christian Bale Batman voice throughout it.
Yeah, just that guy from King
Yeah.
Kong. I mean, I know he's won an Oscar and stuff, but to everyone else, he's that guy from King Kong.
And I don't know what other areas you kind of wanted to go in here now, unless you want to move into our favourite scenes and stuff.
Should we go through the one-liners?
Yeah, oh man, where to begin? There's so many in this film. We talked about a few already. We've done the "Ain't Got Time to Bleed," "Dylan, you son of a bitch." Obviously, there's "Get to the Chopper." I'd say that's Schwarzenegger's second most famous line, behind "I'll be back."
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows "Get to the Chopper," but then the one I forgot about in this, and it's the funniest line I think. It's they're in the Vietnam base and he stabs the guy. He's like stuck into the wall and he just dies. He's like, stick around.
Yeah, and you know what? Any other actor, you'd like put your head in your hands and go like, "Oh, why? That was terrible." But because it's Arnie, you just go with it. And you were I don't want to make this a San Andreas review, but you went to see the film. I haven't seen it, but you told me a line that The Rock says in that, and it immediately reminded me of something that Arnie would have done back in the day.
I remember talking about the one line.
Yeah.
I think it's the final of the film. Not really a spoiler. The Rock's looking at an American flag, and he's like, "We're gonna rebuild," and it's the most 80s line you can think of. And I spoke before saying that The Rock is the only 80s action hero left. San Andreas was evidence of that. I mean, it's a disaster film. It's an alright one. It's better than most, not as good as a few of them. But The Rock carries it, and that's why people go to watch it. And it's films like that. If The Rock wants a film, prime example, the reboot of Big Trouble in Little China, the only reason they're doing that is because The Rock wants to. He's got that star attraction which people like Arnie had, Stallone had, that have all lost it now. He's the last remaining one, and it's okay. This is the wrong review to talk about it, but it's one of them where it's like making him who he is, and this precisely what he's doing, and it won't be long before he ends up in the Expendables.
And that was our San Andreas review. no, but no, I completely get what you're saying, and I don't think Arnie or Stallone have lost it. I just think that the projects they're picking aren't great. I actually really liked Escape Plan, which was the crossover that they did together. That was a pretty good, enjoyable action movie, I thought. But I'm trying to think of other one-liners in this movie. There's just so many, like, all the characters get so many.
I'm just going to quickly add in, is Escape Plan the one where he's like, you punch like a vegetarian?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
It's a good movie.
That was a trailer. I know, I had a good prospect, I just never got around to it. I think with this, there's so many, like, the whole film is essentially one-liners. Like, we spoke earlier, it's like, I ain't got time to bleed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? This script is one-liners. There is hardly ever more than 2 or 3 lines of words that are like technical words at that.
And I'm not taking it away from the writers of the film, but there's rumours that Shane Black may have helped pen some of the script as well, or at least done a few script rewrites. So maybe he added in a few lines, because it does seem like his style of humour.
Exactly. I mean, with Shane Black, he's even in this, which is great because he's so young at the time, and obviously now he is going to be working on the sequel to Predator 2.
That seems like it's been in development for ages, though.
I know. I think they spoke about it, and then when they got Shane Black on board, everyone was like, "Right, here we go," because they'll blatantly get Arnie back now.
Mm.
And the fact that they've got the guy that helped with the first one, it gives it a credibility where people might give it a chance. But I mean, talk about Shane Black for a minute. Iron Man 3 was alright, but his work, he likes his hard rated R stuff, and I think we'll get a return to that, especially with the success of Mad Max,
Mm.
which is great for the future of the franchise. I mean, I think Predators was a 15 here in the UK, but that had nothing. I mean, I don't remember any gore or anything out of it. Maybe Predator's head got chopped off, but that was like green goo.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get a trend of rated R films now again, which is great.
Oh, I hope so, because the action movies of recent times, not counting Mad Max and stuff like that, but before that, they've kind of, I don't know, they just seem to have lost their edge, lost their grit a little bit, and it'll be good to get some. I mean, I don't mind violence, but I don't need like a whole film full of violence. But it just needs that. I don't know. It's something that the '80s action movies had, and a few of the '90s ones did as well. But mostly the '80s, it was just, you know, guns and awesomeness, R-rated, not going to shy away from the blood, and it would be nice to see action movies kind of go back to that.
That's the thing. I mean, if we can look at this, if Predator was a modern Hollywood film, you wouldn't have the skinned people,
Oh no.
which kind of make it. When they're killing them, they would not have the hand on the floor twitching, pulling the trigger. I mean, that you said that's quite like sort of terrifying, and scary.
Mm.
It's like a bizarre, and okay, we don't know what happened. They wouldn't let that happen today. They wouldn't let a guy have a hole punched through him today. There's so much that wouldn't get greenlit, which is why I think 80s cinema has kind of like grown into these cult classic films, because it's stuff we just can't get anymore, and this is the epitome of that decade.
Yeah, what it'd be like now is there's a scene in this film which I still find kind of random. They show every single member of the team die apart from Billy, and he dies off screen. You just kind of hear him scream. That would be the equivalent of what they do now in a film. Like, it would all be off screen. You wouldn't see anything. I mean, I'm always a big I always want to see films that leave it up to the audience's imagination. But with a film like this, you kind of, I talked about this earlier, you need that level of violence because it just shows what the team are actually up against.
Yeah, and it makes it worthy. I mean, if you had on-screen deaths, the Schwarzenegger fight, you think Schwarzenegger's going to win within a second.
Mm.
Take that away, there's a few fights, you might fear for him for a minute or two. There are so many things that build up to this epic final fight, and the final fight stuff, because it's a fist fight, the Predator has so much going behind it that you could really think that Schwarzenegger might not win it, and it is great because it just makes it better, and it's what you want to see from the actual film. You want to see a good fight.
Definitely, and just moving on, I think I've almost said really everything I need to say about this film, but if you want to do our favourite one scene and then we'll go into our general thoughts wrap up. I know my favourite scene.
Do you want to do
Yeah,
yours
oh yeah, I'll
first?
take mine first. It's the bit where they vaguely see the Predator running off through the jungle, and there's like 5 minutes of just non-stop shooting into nothingness, into the trees. Like, Max got a Gatling gun, he's just firing it. It's just rounds after ammunition. They're not hitting anything, they're just shooting. They're all screaming like, "Ah!" as they're shooting the guns, and it's just... If you can sum the 80s action genre up in one scene, it would be that scene. And it's brilliant.
It, I was watching it like 12 at night and I had to like turn it down because it was like waking everyone up. That scene was pretty fun. I think with mine, I might have to go for the skin bodies bit, because I think that it's the first introduction of the Predator, sort of the music, and the tension was like crazy. It was so good, and it was building and building. The jump back, the crows come out, then you get it, the skin bodies. And I think that's one of my standout bits, because when I think of it as a whole, you think of everyone dying, but as one major scene, I think it has to be that one.
Yeah, no, that's a good scene. It's shocking when you first see it. You're like, oh shit, okay, this is what the team's up against. But yeah, we'll just go into general wrap up now. It's nice to see a film like this where you've got a squad with this amount of characters, and each member of the team is likable. And you really don't want to see any of them die because they're all quirky in their own way, and that's kind of what I hope stuff like Suicide Squad does when it comes out. Like, you like each member of the team. because these aren't all completely good guys. You know, some of them are just like, you know, hardened murderers and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just nice to see a film where you actually care about the characters. And going back to the Robert Rodriguez one really quickly, I didn't care about anyone in that film, and that's a problem when, you know, you're meant to be rooting for the good guys. But general overview of Predator, one of the best 80s action films. One of the best Arnold films. It's always nice to see Carl Weathers in a film, because really you've just got this and the Rockies and that's it. Yeah, it's a really good one if you're a lover of. I don't want to say it's a sci-fi movie, but you've got the alien aspect to it. It's just a fun action movie. Just get a bunch of mates round. If you haven't seen it before, give it a watch. It's not a long movie. It's one of my favourite action movies, I think. Yeah, go and see Predator if you haven't seen it.
Yep, I think with me, I'm gonna kind of follow through. Arnie, this is one of his most iconic roles today. It's great to see him on form. For some reason, if you've never seen a Schwarzenegger film, this is one of the first two you should be watching. It's fun, as you said. Get your mates round, crack a beer. It is a film of its time, and it is why the 80s were like as fantastic as they were. And it summarises it with that incredible handshake. This is one that I think everyone needs to see, whether they hate these films or not.
Definitely. And yeah, we'll probably have another Predator movie coming out in a few years, judging by the current trend of Hollywood bringing back series. And that leads us on to what will be our Monday review. Our main show will be giving you our Jurassic World review. We're actually kind of looking forward to that movie now, and obviously reviews have gone up now for in the US, but we'll be bringing you ours on Monday. Hopefully we have a lot to talk about on that one. You can find us on Facebook.com/CinemaSavvy.
Do it!
We're on Twitter as well at cinema_savvy.
Do it!
And on Letterboxd as well at letterboxd.com/cinema_savvy. Letterboxd, you can basically just see our list of films that we've put up before, talked about. It's just an easy to view site, and it's good for film fans, so definitely check that out. But yeah, join us again on Monday, Jurassic World review, and until then, thanks for listening.